Book Summary, Prisoners of Geography. Author, Tim Marshall. Chapter 1, Russia. Russia, the world's largest country with over 6 million square miles, spans 11 time zones, possessing a geography that is both an advantage and a challenge. The North European Plain, a flat expanse stretching from France to the Ural Mountains, is a strategic weakness in the West, lacking natural barriers for protection. Russia's history records numerous invasions through this region, such as Napoleon's 1812 campaign with 600,000 troops, only 50,000 returned, and Hitler's Barbarossa campaign in 1941, costing Russia millions of lives. To counter this, Russia has consistently sought to expand its territory, establishing buffer zones like Poland and the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. After World War II, the Soviet Union controlled Eastern Europe, but when the USSR collapsed in 1991, Russia lost these buffers. NATO's eastward expansion, with Poland joining in 1999 and the Baltic states in 2004, heightened concerns in Moscow. This led to actions like the 2014 annexation of Crimea following the Ukraine crisis, aimed at protecting the Black Sea port of Sevastopol, Russia's key naval base. Crimea holds not only historical value but also strategic importance for maintaining sea access and countering NATO. Another issue is Russia's lack of year-round warm water ports. Arctic ports like Murmansk freeze in winter, while Vladivostok in the Pacific is surrounded by Japan and South Korea. This explains why Russia has sought control of the Black Sea and invaded Afghanistan in 1979 to reach the Indian Ocean. However, Afghanistan's mountainous terrain proved a barrier, earning it the title, Graveyard of Empires. The author emphasizes that Russia's geography forces a defensive mindset, constantly seeking to protect its vast but vulnerable territory. Chapter 2, China. China boasts diverse geography. Fertile eastern plains serve as the population and economic hub, while the Gobi Desert and Himalayas in the west shield it from invasions from Central Asia and India. Since the Qin dynasty, 221 BCE, China expanded from the North China Plain, overcoming Mongol invasions in the 13th century to become a global power. Today, China faces internal challenges in Tibet and Xinjiang. Tibet, located on a plateau near the Himalayas, is called the Water Tower as it supplies water to major rivers like the Mekong, Yellow, and Yangtze. China occupied Tibet in 1950 to counter threats from India and secure water resources. Xinjiang, home to the Muslim Uyghur population, is another hotspot where China enforces strict policies to maintain stability and exploit oil and gas resources. Internationally, China expands its influence through the Belt and Road Initiative, 2013, connecting Asia, Europe, and Africa. For example, the Gwadar port in Pakistan gives China access to the Indian Ocean, bypassing the Malacca Strait, a choke point vulnerable to U.S. blockades. China also invests in Africa, such as building the Nairobi-Mombasa Railway in Kenya, to extract resources and expand markets. However, disputes in the South China Sea over the Nine-Dash Line and artificial island building, e.g., at Scarborough Shoal, create tensions with Vietnam, the Philippines, and the U.S. The author notes that China's geography drives its ambitions while posing challenges in maintaining unity and expanding influence. Chapter 3, United States. The United States benefits from an ideal geographic position, with two vast oceans, the Atlantic and Pacific, acting as natural walls against invasions. To the north lies Canada, a close ally, and to the south, Mexico, which poses no significant military threat. The Appalachian Mountains in the east and the Rockies in the west encircle a vast central plain, where fertile land and abundant resources have fueled agriculture and industry. Territorial expansion began with British colonies on the east coast in the 17th century. A major milestone was the 1803 Louisiana Purchase from France for $15 million, extending U.S. territory from the Mississippi River to the Rockies. The Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848, secured states like California and Nevada through the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. The purchase of Alaska from Russia in 1867, $7.2 million, and the annexation of Hawaii in 1898 further solidified U.S. dominance over two oceans. The U.S.'s strength lies not only in its natural geography but also in its military and civilian power. With about 100 million firearms in civilian hands and allies like Canada, the country is nearly invulnerable to traditional attacks. Control over the Florida Strait and the Panama Canal, completed in 1914, allows the U.S. to dominate Western Hemisphere trade. Military bases like Guam, Okinawa, and Diego Garcia ensure global influence. However, the rise of China in the South China Sea and Russia in Eastern Europe poses challenges. Interventions like the Iraq War, 2003, and Afghanistan, from 2001, show U.S. willingness to protect its interests, though its distant geography shields it from direct threats. Chapter 4, Western Europe. Western Europe is blessed with the fertile North European plain, a mild climate, and major rivers like the Rhine, Danube, and Seine, which have driven agriculture and trade since the Roman Empire, 1st century. France, Germany, and the UK thrive due to favorable geography, becoming global economic hubs. The North European plain is a major agricultural region but was also the main battleground in World War I, 1914–1918, and World War II, 1939–1945. Rivers connect regions, fostering commercial cities like London, Hamburg, and Rotterdam, Europe's largest port, handling millions of containers annually. After the war, the European Union, EU, formed in 1957, ensured peace and prosperity, making Western Europe a leading economic region. However, geography creates economic disparities. Southern European countries like Greece, with 80% of their land being hilly, lack arable land and struggle to develop commercial hubs, leading to reliance on EU bailouts during the 2008 financial crisis. Greece received billions of euros in aid from Germany and the IMF. In contrast, Germany, with its vast plains and strong industry, is the EU's economic powerhouse. In 2012, German media, like Bild, stereotyped Southern Europeans as lazy compared to hard-working Northern Europeans, but the author stresses this stems from geographic differences. Migration waves from the Middle East, particularly Syria, from 2011, have increased tensions. Hungary built border fences to block refugees, exposing EU divisions over immigration policy. Brexit in 2016 showed the UK leveraging its island geography for greater independence, exiting the EU to control borders and trade. Dependence on Russian gas via the Nord Stream pipeline, 2011, is a strategic weakness. Germany imports 30% of its gas from Russia, making it vulnerable to Eastern European upheavals. The author emphasizes that Western Europe's geography, plains and rivers, is both an asset and a challenge in maintaining unity and energy security. Chapter 5, Africa. Africa's geography is diverse but harsh. The Sahara Desert divides North and Sub-Saharan Africa, and major rivers like the Nile, Congo, and Zambezi, with rapids like Victoria Falls on the Zambezi, hinder goods transport. Shallow coastlines lacking deep water ports isolated the continent since the Mali Empire, 13th century. Despite beautiful beaches in Kenya, the terrain makes building ports for large cargo ships nearly impossible, limiting resource exports. During colonial times, 19th century, Britain, France, and Belgium drew borders ignoring cultural and geographic realities, causing lasting ethnic conflicts. The 1994 Rwandan genocide between Hutu and Tutsi, killing over 800,000, is a stark example. Africa is rich in resources, oil in Nigeria, minerals like cobalt in Congo, but poor roads and infrastructure slow economic growth. Since the 20th century, African nations have worked to overcome geographic limitations. Tanzania and Angola, with Chinese support, built deep-water ports like Bagamoyo, Tanzania, projected to handle 20 million containers annually, becoming Africa's largest port. China heavily invests, building the Nairobi-Mombasa Railway in Kenya and extracting oil in Angola and copper in Zambia. However, Chinese loans raised debt concerns. Zambia lost control of Lusaka's international airport due to unpaid debts. Africa's strategic location, like the Bab el-Mandeb Strait near Yemen, attracts global powers. Nigeria, with significant oil production, is a leading economy, but violence from Boko Haram, since 2009, in the north hinders progress. Sudan faces the Darfur civil war, since 2003, partly due to desert encroachment on farmland, fueling tribal conflicts. The author stresses that Africa's geography, deserts, inaccessible rivers, shallow coasts, limits its potential, but its resources and geopolitical position make it a focal point for competition among China, the US, and Europe. Chapter 6, Middle East. The Middle East has complex geography with the Arabian Desert, Zagros and Elburz Mountains, and Tigris and Euphrates rivers, shaping civilization since antiquity. Rich in oil, the region drew global attention since the Ottoman Empire, 13th to 20th centuries. After World War I, the 1916 Sykes-Picot Agreement between Britain and France redrew borders, creating nations like Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, causing conflicts by ignoring geography and culture. For instance, Iraq's borders do not reflect the distribution of Sunni, Shia, and Kurdish populations, leading to internal instability. The Israel-Palestine conflict erupted in 1948 when Britain withdrew from Palestine, leaving disputes over Jerusalem and Gaza. The Six-Day War, 1967, saw Israel occupy the Golan Heights, complicating peace efforts. Oil shapes Middle Eastern geopolitics. The Hormuz Strait, controlled by Iran, carries 20% of the world's oil, making it a strategic flashpoint. The Iran-Iraq War, 1980 to 1988, with millions dead, stemmed from disputes over oil-rich land at the Shatt al-Arab waterway. Religious divides between Sunni and Shia fuel tensions. Saudi Arabia, a Sunni hub, and Iran, a Shia leader, vie for influence, such as backing opposing groups in Yemen's war, since 2015. Terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, ISIS, emerging in 2014 in Iraq and Syria, exploit deserts and mountains for operations, adding to regional instability. External powers interventions, like the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, often attributed to oil interests, further destabilize the region. Russia supports Syria's Bashar al-Assad regime, since 2011, while the U.S. backs Israel and Saudi Arabia. Turkey, with its strategic Bosporus Strait, grows in influence but faces Kurdish issues. The author emphasizes that the Middle East's geography, oil, mountains, rivers, is both a valuable resource and a source of ethnic, religious, and international conflicts. Chapter 7, India and Pakistan. India and Pakistan have diverse but challenging geography, with the Himalayas, Karakoram, and major rivers like the Indus and Ganges shaping history and conflicts. The Himalayas form a natural barrier between India and China but spark border disputes, like the 1962 India-China war over Aksai Chin and Arunachal Pradesh, where China gained the upper hand due to high terrain. The Indus River is Pakistan's lifeline, but India controls its headwaters, creating tensions over water resources. When Britain withdrew from India in 1947, borders dividing Punjab and Bengal triggered ethnic violence, displacing millions and killing hundreds of thousands. The Kashmir dispute emerged soon after, leading to three wars, 1947, 1965, 1999, and remaining a flashpoint, especially at the Siachen Glacier, the world's highest battlefield. Pakistan faces internal instability from groups like the Taliban, active in the Afghanistan border region, such as the 2014 Peshawar school attack. India leverages its geography to expand influence in the Indian Ocean via the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, monitoring the Malacca Strait, a critical oil route. China, India's rival, invests in Pakistan's Gwadar port since 2001, part of the Belt and Road Initiative, to access the Indian Ocean and counter India. The Tibet dispute complicates India-China relations, as Tibet's plateau is China's strategic buffer against India. Geography shapes regional conflicts, high mountains separate nations, but valleys and rivers are contested zones. The author stresses that religious divides, Hindu in India, Muslim in Pakistan, combined with rugged geography and water resources, make peace elusive. India, with over 1.2 billion people, and Pakistan, with 200 million, continue to compete in this volatile region. Chapter 8, Korea and Japan. Korea and Japan are profoundly shaped by their natural geography. The Korean peninsula, home to South Korea, was divided into North and South after World War II, 1945, at the 38th parallel. North Korea's rugged, hilly terrain hosts 10,000 artillery pieces on hills just 35 miles from Seoul, South Korea's capital, threatening 25 million people. Despite South Korea's double population, 50 million, and economy 80 times stronger, its flat southern border makes it vulnerable to surprise attacks, while advancing north is tough due to mountains. Tensions escalated with events like North Korea's 2006 nuclear test, when it declared nuclear capability, destabilizing the region. Japan, an archipelago with 6,852 islands, thrived since the Meiji era, 1868, despite scarce resources. Its island geography protected it from major invasions, like the failed Mongol attempts in the 13th century, but forces reliance on sea routes for oil and food imports. Japan built a strong navy, demonstrated by its victory over Russia at Tsushima, 1904–1905. After World War II, Japan's pacifist constitution limited its military, relying on the U.S., with bases like Okinawa hosting 25,000 American troops, to counter China and North Korea. The Senkaku/Diaoyu Islands dispute with China since 1971, tied to oil and gas in the East China Sea, is a current flashpoint, escalating naval tensions. Both nations are influenced by the U.S. and China. South Korea hosts 28,500 U.S. troops, Japan 50,000 at bases like Yokosuka. North Korea maintains an alliance with China, receiving economic aid via the Rajan port. Geography shapes strategy. South Korea is vulnerable to North Korean artillery, Japan to sea route blockades. Tim Marshall emphasizes that geography compels both nations to maintain tight U.S. alliances to counter powerful neighbors while competing over history and territory, like the Dokdo/Takeshima Island dispute. Chapter 9, Latin America. Latin America has diverse but harsh geography, with the Amazon rainforest, Andes Mountains, and vast plains like the Pampas. Since Spanish and Portuguese colonial times, 15th century, the region has been rich in resources but isolated by difficult terrain. The Amazon, the world's largest rainforest, and the 7,000 kilometers Andes hinder transportation and regional unity. Major rivers like the Amazon are unnavigable for goods due to rapids. During independence in the 19th century, leaders like Simón Bolívar failed to create a regional alliance due to geographic fragmentation. The Panama Canal, completed in 1914, became a vital trade route but fell under U.S. control per the Monroe Doctrine, 1823, affirming U.S. dominance in the Western Hemisphere. Latin America faces poverty and inequality. Drug cartels, like those in Mexico, emerged in the 1970s, controlling cocaine trafficking across the U.S. border, causing violence with tens of thousands of deaths yearly. Mexico, with the Sierra Madre and Narrow Plains, relies economically on the U.S., with 80% of exports going there. Brazil, the region's largest nation, has agricultural potential but is limited by the Amazon's infrastructure challenges. Oil in Venezuela and gas in Argentina's Vaca Muerta are significant, but poor management causes economic crises, like Venezuela's hyperinflation since 2013. China is increasing influence, investing in Nicaragua's canal, planned for 2014, to rival Panama and extracting oil in Venezuela. These projects, like Peru's deepwater port, raise debt concerns. The UNASUR Alliance, 2008, aims to foster regional cooperation but struggles due to dispersed geography. The author stresses that Latin America's geography, forests, mountains, remote plains, hampers unity and development, making it susceptible to influence from powers like the US and China. Chapter 10, The Arctic. The Arctic, with 5.5 million square miles of icy ocean, is a harsh but resource-rich region, holding 13% of global oil and 30% of gas reserves. Historically overlooked due to its brutal climate, 19th-century explorations, like John Franklin's in 1845, revealed its potential. Global warming since the late 20th century has melted ice, opening shipping routes like Canada's Northwest Passage and Russia's Northern Sea Route, shortening transit times from Asia to Europe. Russia leads the Arctic race, with 32 icebreakers, including 6 nuclear-powered ones, far surpassing the US's single polar star. In 2007, Russia planted a flag on the Arctic seabed, claiming resource rights. Arctic coastal nations, Canada, Norway, Denmark, via Greenland, and the US, compete fiercely. Canada claims the Northwest Passage as internal waters, while the US views it as an international route, sparking disputes since 1985 when the US sent an icebreaker through without notice. Denmark and Canada contest the tiny Hans Island since 1953, alternating flag placements. Russia bolsters its position with a Murmansk military base and the world's strongest icebreaker fleet, planning a new vessel in 2018 capable of breaking 10-foot thick ice. The Arctic Council, 1996, coordinates cooperation, but tensions rise over resources and sea routes. The author emphasizes that the Arctic's geography, ice and vast oceans, is both a challenge and an opportunity. Issues like pollution, fishing, and ship accidents, like the 1965 Lenin icebreaker's radioactive leak, demand international cooperation. The Arctic is a new geopolitical hotspot, with Russia holding an edge through strategic investments.